Hey folks, this President's Day, skip the endless mattress sales and celebrate like the founding fathers really would have with some sticky, fresh farm hemp flower from our friends at Sunset Lake CBD. Honor our founding fathers in the way that we would by relaxing and not deifying them. Sunset Lake can be a part of this occasion. To honor it, they are releasing 2 brand new flower strains. Suver Haze, perfect for staying relaxed, focused, and productive during the day. Sour Lifter, a mellow, funky take on the best-selling Lifter strain. And here's the best part. You can try these new strains and their smokables for 30% off. Just use code NEWFLOWER, all one word, at checkout. I am a Sunset Lake regular user, particularly their gummies with melatonin that help me go to sleep. And so taking advantage of this sale, if you are interested in these products, is probably a good idea because 30% off is no joke. The sale started yesterday and it ends February 23rd at midnight Eastern. So again, that's 30% off CBD smokables with code NEWFLOWER. With these 2 new strains released. I have the lotion here that I use now that skin's getting dry. It's really, really dry up here in New York and cold, especially today. And I'm staying in more, so I'm using more Sunset Lake CBD to relax. And you can go over there now, sunsetlakecbd.com. Use code FLOWER to save, use code NEWFLOWER to save 30% off on all CBD smokables. This sale ends February 23rd at midnight. See their site for additional terms and conditions. Again, that's sunsetlakecbd.com. Use code NEWFLOWER, all one word. Save 30% on all CBD smokables. See their site for additional terms and conditions. And now time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, February 18th, 2025. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Molly White of the Citation Needed newsletter will be with us to talk about crypto, the Trump administration, and what it could mean for our economy. Also on the program, hours after Trump announced mass firings at the FDA so Musk can bring in his SpaceX workers instead, a Delta flight crashes and flips. 80 people on board. Thankfully, they're okay. At least some are hospitalized, but they've survived. The head of the food division at the FDA resigns after more mass firings, including those reviewing the safety of Elon Musk's Neuralink brain chip that keeps killing monkeys. Musk turns his sights on gutting the SEC next, which, like the coincidence with Neuralink at the FDA, sued him in 2022 for not disclosing his Twitter stock and underpaying his investors by $150 million. Birds of a feather, him and Trump. A majority of the probationary employees Trump and Musk have fired citing poor performance had good performance reviews, the superiors tell the press. We'll get to that later in the show. Trump's directive has the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission drop all trans discrimination cases. A USAID worker sues the Trump administration over his wife's pregnancy scare abroad. because the funding freeze made it so they couldn't evacuate. Trump nominates Ed Martin, a Stop the Steal organizer, as U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C. Kathy Hochul is meeting with key Democrats today, including Hakeem Jeffries, about removing Eric Adams. It's been a long time coming. He's literally being blackmailed, so can't do his job. Mexico threatens to sue Google over capitulating to Trump's Gulf of America stunt. Rubio and Waltz are in Saudi Arabia, meeting with Russian officials, negotiating over the war in Ukraine. The death toll in Kentucky rises to 14 after horrific floods. And lastly, some good news finally. Indigenous activist Leonard Peltier free after nearly 50 years spent on a widely discredited conviction for killing 2 FBI agents. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. Post Coconut Clarity writes in, Adams isn't being blackmailed, he's being extorted. Hashtag words mean things. Okay. All right. Extorted, blackmailed. I think both can kind of work, depending on the definition, but I see we've decided to be pedantic today. That's fine. That's fine. He's being extorted. That's fine. Yeah, whatever. I say he's being blackmailed. Doesn't matter.
Oh, yeah, I see. Okay, extortion is a general term for obtaining something through threats or coercion, while blackmail is a specific type of extortion that involves threatening to reveal secrets.
Okay, so the pedant was correct. and I'm incorrect. But yes, he's being extorted. Thank you very much. You're right. This is why we rely on our audience.
Probably he's being blackmailed too, but we don't know about that.
He's being extorted. I appreciate the English majors in our IMs very much. So let's talk about this here. Over the weekend, the acting commissioner of the Social Security Administration left her position after Elon Musk and the Doge, Groyper, Twinks posters demanded access to the sensitive data at the administration, which is a theme across this less than, full month of Trump being in office, which is Elon Musk, who is trying to set up a banking service via X, formerly Twitter, has been combing around in the financial records of every American individual, nonprofit, and business, and seemingly feeding it into his AI or his algorithm. We still don't necessarily know what exactly he's doing with this information. Not that it matters, because it's a massive agreed upon security and privacy breach, funneling our most sensitive information to the world's richest man, who is also a complete lunatic that believes we're going to be able to colonize Mars or whatever. And
political still calling it an efficiency and government regulation trimming operation too, which is really stupid for
real lie.
News organization to say.
Yeah, news organizations need to be more explicit about it. I mean, even their fear about calling his Nazi salute what it was. It was proven correct in the same week when he went to meet or went to speak at the AfD far-right rally in Germany about forgetting their past, and previously having endorsed anti-Semitic conspiracy theories on that platform. Like, he has, with his massive amounts of wealth, intimidated vast swaths of the press, and has been going after this federal workforce for weeks at this point. So the Social Security Administration acting commissioner left her position. Her name was Michelle King. She had spent several decades working on behalf of Social Security so that our seniors nearly can get their payments. Nearly 2/3 of seniors kept out of poverty due to Social Security. It's one of our most important government functions, if not the most important government function, that or Medicare. It's hard to say. But last week, like we saw at the DOJ, Trump had to basically bypass a bunch of senior executives at the Social Security Administration to get his Bork, somebody who would sign off on giving Elon Musk access to the Social Security data. And here he is last week at the Oval Office in this weird press conference where he used his son as a human shield, spreading the conspiracy theory that has the false claim, the lie that has continued into this week about Social Security. This is how it originated, or at the very least, how he introduced this to the public.
Your tax dollars need to be spent wisely on things that matter to the people.
Like AI.
I mean, these things, like, it's just common sense. It's not draconian or radical. I think it's really just saying, let's look at each of these expenditures and say, is this actually in the best interest of the people? And if it is, it's approved. If it's not, we should think about it. So, there's crazy things like
Pause real quick.
Grocery.
That's what Congress does when they pass those bills.
Yep, they go. Also, Social Security is self-funding. People pay into it their entire lives, and you don't need to find the fraud that he's describing. We'll debunk it in a second, but 69 million Americans rely on Social Security.
Yeah, but let's spend billions of dollars to give this guy to make spy satellites.
It's essentially a pension fund for retirees that we've made into a federal government program. So this is not the place to look for waste, fraud, and abuse, but that's not what he's looking for. He's trying to steal our data so he can make more money with his banking service.
So, there's crazy things like just cursory examination of Social Security, and we've got people in there that are 150 years old. Now, do you know anyone who's 150? I don't. Okay. They should be on the Guinness Book of World Records. They're missing out. So, that's a case where, I think they're probably dead. It's my guess. Or they should be very famous, one of the two. And then there's a whole bunch of Social Security payments where there's no identifying information. Well, why is there no identifying information? Obviously, we want to make sure that people who deserve to receive Social Security do receive it, and that they receive it quickly and accurately.
Accurately received.
I'll tell you another crazy thing. So, one of the things is
all right, he goes off on another tangent. So people who deserve it receive it. Every American that has worked is paying into Social Security. This is how it gets funded. When you pay your taxes, you're paying into Social Security. There's nobody who's undeserving of Social Security who is paying into Social Security. Broadly.
That benefit fraud thing, there was something in Japan, I believe it was, where it was literally moving their age expectations up because there are so many people actually doing this. But even in that scenario, this is a fraction of what the government actually pays. And the idea that we're looking at this sort of thing, this low-level petty benefit fraud, which happens but at a minuscule level, instead of the amount we're giving to the Pentagon to lose in foreign wars and stuff like that, it's a big con.
It is, and he's also so dumb that he's misreading the data that he's describing here, as are his little minions. But here's Caroline Leavitt last night on Sean Hannity's show responding to the freak out about this, rightly, that people are like, oh my gosh, Social Security, this is one of the most popular programs in the country. And Musk's lie about the 150-year-old plus people is repeated here by the White House spokesperson.
Yeah, there's no evidence about that.
This is a promise President Trump campaigned on. He is now delivering on it. And I've been fighting fake news reporters all day long here in the Washington, D.C. swamp who are trying to fearmonger the American people into believing that this administration is going after their hard-earned tax dollars and their hard-earned Social Security checks. So I want to set the record straight on your show tonight, Sean, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do so. President Trump has directed Elon Musk and the Doge team to identify identify fraud at the Social Security Administration. They haven't dug into the books yet, but they suspect that there are tens of millions of deceased people who are receiving fraudulent Social Security payments. And so their goal in going into the Social Security Administration is to identify three things. Number one, to identify duplicate payments and to end them. Number two, to identify payments that are going to deceased people who are no longer living and should no longer be receiving that money. And number three, to protect the integrity of this system for hardworking Americans who have been paying into it their entire lives. So rest assured, to all of the people watching your show tonight, if you paid into the system, honestly, you will continue to receive your Social Security checks. Do not buy into the lies from the legacy fake news media who are trying to fear you and scare you into believing otherwise. This is what we've seen them do about President Trump for years with every promise that he has made. And he's going in there to protect your hard-earned money. That is the ultimate goal.
That is not the ultimate goal. They have to reassure the gerontocratic audience of Fox News that their Social Security payments, which many of them rely on, are not going to be touched. But here's the reality. Wired, which has been doing incredible reporting really since Trump got inaugurated, covering Musk in particular and his efforts, have debunked this. And listen to how silly this is. Scroll down to the part that starts with computer programmers. Computer programmers quickly claimed that the 150 figure was not evidence of fraud, but rather the result of a weird quirk of the Social Security Administration's benefit system, which was largely written in COBOL, C-O-B-O-L, a 60-year-old programming language that undergirds SSA's databases, as well as systems from many other U.S. government agencies. COBOL, C-O-B-O-L, is rarely used today, and as such, Musk's cadre of young engineers may well be unfamiliar with it, because COBOL does not have a date type. Some implementations rely on a system where all dates are coded to a reference point. The most commonly used is May 20th, 1875, as this was the date of an international standard-setting conference held in Paris known as the Convention du Mètre. These systems default to the reference point when a birth date is missing or incomplete, meaning all of those entries in 2025 would show an age of 150. That's just one possible explanation for what Doge allegedly found. Musk could also have simply looked up the Social Security Administration's own website, which explains that since September 2015, the agency has automatically stopped benefit payments when anyone reaches the age of 115. 115! So they've automatically done that. Are there going to be a few cases that slip through the cracks? Potentially. But it's on its own website, debunking the premise of his entire claim. However, on Monday morning, Musk doubled down, posting a screenshot of what he claims were figures from the Social Security database to X, writing that the numbers of people in each age bucket with the death field set to false. The figure suggests that over 10 million people aged over 120 were collecting benefits. Maybe Twilight is real and there are a lot of vampires collecting Social Security. Oh, a Twilight reference! How topical! Musk wrote.
What a science genius.
The database Musk took the screenshot from listed almost 400 million people, which is more than 5 times the number of people receiving benefits in 2024, according to the Social Security Administration's own website. It's also significantly more than the entire United States population. So the genius coder, who's not a coder, or, what he thinks he's an engineer, but he's never really invented anything in his life, except for Teslas that are more unsafe than the Ford Pinto, that Cybertruck, except for Neuralink, which keeps killing monkeys, except
SpaceX,
for
which keeps dropping satellites into air traffic routes.
Yeah. He was an early investor in PayPal, was kicked out of that, tried to make it into X. He did buy into Tesla, that's true. But he really wants to think of himself as this genius coder, but he couldn't figure out that was essentially a reference point for data that was incomplete. And none of his little Groyper neo-Nazi 4chaners could figure that out either. Damn. Maybe you've got to expand your hiring pool for Doge outside of the Discord. Insane.
Hitchens' razor, coined by Christopher Hitchens. What can be asserted without evidence can also be dismissed without evidence. It is crazy that we are, a month into this almost, and none of the claims of fraud or whatever has been substantiated at all with anything other than that sort of screenshot bullshit, which is immediately debunkable. And yet we still have major institutions. Wired's doing a great job. Politico, though, every single time they mention Doge, they credit it as a good faith regulation and bureaucratic bloat cutting mechanism. What they're doing is slashing the government so they can give tax cuts to all the rich people.
Yeah.
That's what they're doing right now, including looking at Social Security, because that is a big place that they see that the way we should look at them, as a giant piñata to smash and get money out of.
Can we pull up this this sheet that lastly here that shows exactly how many people over the age of 100 are receiving Social Security? It is public. What's incredible is when they pretend this is a private business and that there's a sense of secrecy here. All of this information is public because it is the government. Right at the bottom, it shows the figure 99 and over. 89,106. That's the figure. Not the
those vampires.
8+ million I heard Sean Hannity say in that interview with Levitt. People that are receiving Social Security benefits, they are lying at such a rapid pace to disorient everybody, to make it more difficult to fight back against them. And they are, we'll get into the way that they're targeting these probationary federal workers as well. They are trying to destroy the mechanisms right now that would potentially hamper them from doing this as quickly as possible.
And this is a table from December of last year. How many people would be receiving these checks age 99 and over? And James Suriwiecki, the author, writer here who found this, also tweeted 89,106 is, as it happens, fewer than the number of centenarians in the U.S. as estimated by the census. So we are, again, not sending out billions in Social Security checks to people aged 130.
There you have it. Just dumb people. All right, folks, we're going to be talking to Molly White in just a second, but first, a word from one of our favorite sponsors. Sam particularly loves Factor. It is easy for him as a parent because he can give his son the fresh meals that he likes, and even if he's sometimes picky about it, he knows that Factor has his back, and it helps you optimize your nutrition. Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well so easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. We want to thank Factor for sponsoring the Majority Report and supporting us. Factor lets you do you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for your lifestyle. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST, one word, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. With 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week, it is easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. I'm already... March is the month where I'm really cracking down on my fitness prior to my wedding, and the Factor is already in my plans. You could say I'm factoring it in because I want to get, stop eating candy at 11 p.m.
I've heard Factor is a hit among nurses.
Ooh, well, there we go. More and more people speaking well about Factor and how convenient and good for you it is. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FACTORPODCAST, one word, to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code FACTORPODCAST at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. All right. A word from one of our other sponsors. Sam will be speaking to you about that, and then we'll be talking to Molly White.
Today's program sponsored by Nutrafol. couple of years ago, I started taking Nutrafol. Why? Because I was feeling like I'm a little thinning on this side, a little bit up here. And I wanted my hair not to be thinning, and I wanted it to be in healthy shape. But I also didn't want to take any drugs. And Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand. It is trusted by 1.5 million people. I guess 1.5 million plus one, me. See thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. This is what I noticed. Up here, I've noticed less thinning, but the thing I really notice is that when I dry my hair in the morning with the towel, I don't look at it and go, what is going on? And that honestly, like, I am almost less concerned with like the hair on my head than actually having to wake up and look at when I dry my hair on my thing.
I thought I was balding in college because I grew my hair out long and it was always all over my towels in the shower.
It was bothering me. Thinning hair, though, is different for men and women. One size fits all approach to hair growth doesn't cut it. Nutrafol has multiple formulas for men, multiple formulas for women that are tailored to different life stages, such as postpartum or menopause, lifestyle factors such as a plant-based lifestyle, all things like that, so you can get just what you need. It's physician-formulated, 100% drug-free ingredients. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting key root causes of thinning: stress, hormones, aging, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism, through whole body health. Some supplements rely on ingredient studies. Nutrafol clinically tests its final formulations to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 72% of men saw more scalp coverage after taking Nutrafol men hair growth supplement for 6 months. 86% of women saw improved hair growth after taking Nutrafol women hair growth supplement for 6 months. Building a hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription required, automated deliveries and free shipping, keeping you on track. Plus, with a Nutrafol subscription, you can save up to 20%. You're going to have access to free naturopathic doctor consults, and a Headspace meditation membership is also included because underneath your hair is your brain. Start your hair growth journey with Nutrafol. For a limited time, Nutrafol offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter the promo code TMR. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafof, Nutrafol. Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com, promo code TMR. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description.
We are back, and we are joined now by Molly White, researcher, software engineer, and the woman behind the Citation Needed newsletter covering the crypto industry. Molly, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
So let's just go back to the election a bit. Can you talk a little bit about crypto spending and how much money was poured into this election on both sides of the presidential race, and just more than the presidential race, even in major Senate elections like in Ohio, that comes to mind?
Yeah, so the crypto industry spent really heavily on mostly congressional races, actually, as you mentioned, this election cycle. They raised over $200 million, and they spent more than $130 million of that on congressional races. Some of them were really big ticket races, like the $40 million they spent in the Ohio Senate race. But they spent very widely and in varying amounts across races throughout the United States. In some cases to support specific candidates, and in some cases to oppose candidates that they saw as threats to the crypto industry. They did spend somewhat on presidential races, not through the super PACs that they created, but as individual crypto founders and companies that were donating to Trump's super PAC primarily, although one crypto founder did also support Kamala Harris.
Who's that founder? Just to keep in the back of my head.
It's one of the people behind Ripple, which is a stablecoin company. Although some other executives at that company supported Trump, so it's a bit of a mixed bag over there.
Well, I'm wondering, because there was a story that we've talked about numerous times now, just because of how much it infuriated us, that 2 weekends ago, I think at this point, Hakeem Jeffries went out to Silicon Valley to make nice with the tech people, which I assume includes a lot of crypto folks. And I'm wondering, who are the crypto people that are getting people like Senator Gillibrand to talk about how we need to regulate the industry and formalize it, as opposed to, I don't know, kill it altogether because it's mindless speculation that is massive transfers of wealth to the top of people who already have a bunch of money?
Yeah, so a lot of that is coming out of some of the biggest crypto companies that probably spring to mind when you think of the crypto industry. So Coinbase, for example, has been very heavily involved in lobbying and in political spending. Ripple has been very involved. The Winklevoss twins, who are behind the Gemini cryptocurrency exchange and also are heavily invested in the sector. Venture capital companies like Andreessen Horowitz have spent very heavily and have been involved in the lobbying as well. And as you allude to, there has been this very concerted effort to try to convince politicians that crypto is this important issue that not only they need to care about from a policy perspective in order to support the crypto industry, which they claim is, a crucial part of the American economy, but that this is actually something that voters cared about, and that, a candidate could win or lose their election based on supporting the crypto industry, which was not actually a particularly true narrative, but it was something that the crypto industry was heavily claiming as a part of their goals to sort of buy support from various congressional leaders who are either up for re-election or who were aiming to be elected for the first time.
You mentioned Andreessen Horowitz, and I want to get back to Mark Andreessen in particular and the debanking fixation that he has and what that really means. But how did crypto get from the central libertarian premise of wanting cryptocurrency to be outside of the whims of the fiat currency in the United States and an asset that is not going to be at the whims of the dollar, essentially, to now relying on U.S. government intervention to uphold the industry, and even discussions about integrating crypto and pegging it not to like a stable coin, but to the U.S. dollar? Is that not a part of the consideration now, like some of what these folks are discussing?
Yeah, so a lot of the original crypto ideology about, getting away from American government control of money and avoiding intermediaries and, being able to transact freely without government intervention or oversight, that has really fallen by the wayside in recent years. I think as crypto companies have realized that it is actually extremely lucrative to have the support of the US government and not be sort of in an adversarial position with them. There are some smaller, crypto projects that still hang on to that original ideology. And you do hear a lot of those talking points repeated by crypto executives, even the billionaires who are donating massive amounts to Trump. But in reality, I think they have strayed very far from that ideology and have realized that it is far more profitable to be this sort of unregulated shadow financial system that is, at least nominally endorsed by the US government, while having very few of the regulations and consumer protections that traditional financial companies have to comply with, which can make it very expensive to be in the financial industry. And so rather than creating this alternative or a sort of subversive version of a financial system, they are really just mirroring the existing financial system, but without the protections that have been learned over hundreds of years of very painful lessons through financial collapses and scams and frauds and, devastation on people who get involved with those types of systems.
Can you explain the differences in how a traditional bank is regulated and what agency mechanisms are used to regulate that bank, and how crypto is outside of that?
Yeah, so there are a bunch of different regulators that sort of work together to oversee banks, some at the federal level, some are state regulators. But, the long and short of it is that you can open a bank account, you can put your money in there, you can have a lot of trust in your bank without having to do an enormous amount of due diligence on whichever bank you choose, because everything is backstopped by the federal government. And so if your bank collapses, you're going to be fine because, up to $250,000 per bank account is insured by the FDIC, which is a federal agency. And so people trust very much in the US banking system because no one has lost money since the FDIC was instituted, despite
Although
the fact
SoftBank, we saw them trying to skirt some of those requirements too, if you recall, right? People putting a little under 250K in a bunch of bank accounts. So they still try, but yeah, regular people are more protected.
Right. And of course, people who, invest in banks sometimes lose money if banks collapse and things like that. But depositors are protected up to that amount. And so people trust in their banks. But there has been separation between what banks are allowed to do and what crypto companies might like to do. And so there have been these firewalls between banks sort of embracing cryptocurrency activities. And so, for example, when a bank has said, we want to offer customers the ability to buy Bitcoin right from their mobile banking app where they deposit their paycheck, the FDIC has said, I don't know about that. Let's ask a bunch of questions, maybe ask you to hold off on that while we investigate regulations. Banks were trying to put Bitcoin ATM kiosks in their lobbies. There were all of these efforts that the FDIC put the brakes on, and other banking regulators have put the brakes on because of the concern that people will assume that, among other things, that their FDIC insurance applies to the Bitcoin that they purchase in their mobile banking app, which is not the case. And that people will believe that crypto companies that are offering services like this have the same backing and backstop as a bank account, which is very much not the case. And in fact, we have actually seen a lot of cryptocurrency companies try to mislead their customers into thinking that their accounts are just as safe as bank accounts. For example, with Celsius, which was a crypto company that collapsed and went bankrupt because of massive fraud behind the company. The CEO is currently pleaded guilty in the United States and is going to be sentenced to prison time, most likely. And they were basically claiming to customers that their assets were as safe or even safer than those in a bank account, which is plainly not the case.
Right. And that 250K threshold that you describe, that was under Dodd-Frank, right? Where that protected folks after the financial collapse up to that amount when they were banking, up to 250K, as you mentioned. But we still haven't reinstated Glass-Steagall, right? Which prevents these banks from gambling with depositor money in some of these riskier ways. Dodd-Frank did do a good job there, but what is the risk now of further potentially allowing these banks to further integrate themselves with the crypto industry, as you described? Like, if I'm going to open my Bank of America app, and like when I open my Venmo app, which is just about individual transactions, it gives you the opportunity to buy crypto. Is that on the table where I'm going to open my TD Bank app or whatever, or Chase, and they're going to say, hey, you want to put a portion of your savings into crypto?
I suspect we'll be seeing that very soon. The regulations on what banks are allowed to do, how traditional finance is allowed to become sort of enmeshed with the cryptocurrency industry, are very much under attack right now, largely because of this campaign, this lobbying from the crypto industry, which would love to see those firewalls that prevent banks from getting hung up in the crypto industry torn down so that they can get access to more customers. We have seen those firewalls actually work reasonably well so far. So, for example, in 2022, FTX collapsed, trillions of dollars went missing. Customers were financially devastated if they had cryptocurrency with FTX. And even those who didn't were devastated because the entire crypto market plummeted in connection to that collapse. But everyday people, who had their money in a bank account or who had money in the stock market or, were uninvolved with the cryptocurrency industry probably wouldn't have noticed if it wasn't for, newspaper headlines about Sam Bankman-Fried. And that's because there was no contagion with the banking system, with large parts of traditional finance. And the goal from the cryptocurrency industry is to reduce that firewall so that honestly, that kind of contagion could very well happen the next time around. And as we've seen from the history of the cryptocurrency industry, these collapses are common. It's a cycle where crypto grows to new heights, prices go even higher than they ever did, and then they crash even further than they did the last time around. And despite this happening over and over and over again, we're now getting calls for less regulation in the crypto industry, more access to customers of banks and other financial institutions. We're seeing traditional finance embrace crypto through the offering of Bitcoin ETFs and other sort of traditional finance adjacent products that you can buy through your brokerage account. So this type of contagion, I think, is a very, very dangerous possibility in the next handful of years.
Can you explain or expand a little bit more on traditional banks creeping more and more into integrating themselves with crypto? I saw another great crypto writer and contributor to the AM Quickie, Jacob Silverman, pointing out that certain pension funds are becoming exposed to crypto as we speak. What are the mechanisms by which traditional banks are already using crypto and integrating it in, and in addition to the ones that we just talked about, how else would this work?
I mean, it's kind of any way you can imagine. They're sort of trying to integrate it in sort of any possible way. We've seen banks talking about offering loans against cryptocurrencies, so you could potentially put your Bitcoin up and borrow US dollars against that, for example. Crypto companies already do this.
I'm sorry. Just would that be mortgages?
It would be anything you wanted to get a loan for. So potentially mortgages, yes. In fact, Coinbase, after the administration has reinstated a program to lend people dollars against their crypto and actively marketed it as, this is a good way to get money for a down payment for a house. So that is one way that we're seeing them do it. Banks holding crypto sort of on their balance sheets is something that we're starting to see them interested in, and even other companies as well. Exposure to crypto adjacent assets like these ETFs, which, you're not actually holding Bitcoin, for example, but you are holding an asset that is pegged to the price of Bitcoin. Banks offering custody services and other banking services or crypto related services for crypto companies where, instead of a bank just holding the US dollars and providing, payroll and normal banking options for a cryptocurrency company, they would actually be taking on crypto asset custody risk and taking control of, crypto assets. Banks have talked about wanting to put their activities on the blockchain. I mean, it's really anything you can imagine.
And the ETFs, the exchange, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the acronym.
Exchange Traded Fund, yeah.
Exchange Traded Fund. What does that underlie for a lot of folks, whether it's in their retirement accounts or, what role does that serve and why does integrating crypto into it present such a risk?
Well, the ETFs really just add another avenue through which people can get exposure to Bitcoin. So, it used to be that you had to get a crypto trading app and figure out how to convert your money and, put it into a crypto wallet, and you had to keep custody of your crypto tokens, which is sometimes challenging to do. And, there's all of this sort of work that goes into holding crypto. Whereas with a crypto ETF, you buy it through your brokerage account, like you might buy a stock or any other ETF or, a mutual fund. And this has added sort of new ways for people and also institutions to get exposure to cryptocurrency. And it also means that as we're seeing more funds being built out, I think there is additional risk that we're seeing people who have exposure to cryptocurrency without necessarily realizing it. Meaning that, there are these sort of combined funds, index funds that are beginning to incorporate these products. We even saw, there's a company called MicroStrategy, which is ostensibly a software company, but it's mostly just a holding company for Bitcoin. And they were recently added to the top NASDAQ index, meaning that if you hold, an index fund that has a basket of NASDAQ traded stocks in it, you might have access or exposure to Bitcoin volatility because one of those companies is in that index fund. And so, increasingly we're seeing these sort of venues through which people end up with exposure to crypto companies without necessarily even realizing it or being made fully aware of the risks involved with those types of assets.
How is not notifying people who may have, say, their retirement invested in this kind of thing? How is that legal that they can basically incorporate a highly speculative, volatile asset into people's savings and that not be something that they're notified about?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, I guess. I mean, I think a lot of the time it's really just people are not reading the fine print. And so, you of course can go and look at exactly which stocks are in your index fund, but people don't always do that. And then there's, other ways that this exposure is added that people just may not understand. So, for example, pension funds, buying some amount of cryptocurrency or cryptocurrency ETFs, and then including those as, a part of the basket of assets that they use for the retirement fund. That's something that we're beginning to see. We even saw it, as sort of a warning sign during the FTX collapse, where a Canadian pension fund had exposure to, basically the FTX collapse and lost money as a result of it. And yet it's something that we're seeing actively marketed to pension fund providers, to retirement account managers, and so on, as a good way to, potentially save for retirement, which is alarming.
And can you just explain a bit more why banks would want to get more involved in this, get in on the fun? I mean, a lot of it's sometimes this isn't the easiest thing for me to understand, so I appreciate you working with me, but so many of the people that bought these, like Bitcoin, got in really early and bought it in bulk. And a lot of this is just to drive up their asset.
Right.
And so if the banks didn't get in on this as early, what is their incentive to get in on the fun now? Is it just because more coins keep getting created and they can then buy it up in bulk and use it as a speculative asset? Is that the goal?
I think it's really a mix of things. Part of it is that people see it as sort of like any other risky asset where the upside is potentially really high. And so they're willing to take on the risk because the return might be massive. And, even though it's really not possible to accumulate the amounts of Bitcoin that some of the earliest Bitcoin, investors, if you want to call it that, have, people still, accumulate substantial amounts of it. And we do see these price swings every time the the market crashes and then, recovers to some extent. So around the time of the FTX collapse, Bitcoin was as low as like $16,000. Now it's up to like $100,000 per Bitcoin. And so people see that potential upside as very tempting, even though it can just as easily go in the opposite direction and regularly does. But I think a lot of it is also just there is so much hype around cryptocurrency, and banks are afraid of being seen as old-fashioned or, slow to follow the latest financial trends. They want to communicate to their customers that they're cutting edge and that they are, trying to incorporate all of this new fancy technology, and crypto is a way for them to do that. There are countless amounts of dollars spent on convincing people who work at banks and other financial institutions that they need to get on the bandwagon because crypto is cool and it will attract their customers and they can make all this money off of it by providing crypto related products to their banking customers. And I think that drives a lot of it is this sort of FOMO end of things, which, retail investors are probably very familiar with, but is very prevalent throughout, industries as well, where people feel like they don't want to be the old fuddy-duddy bank that's just offering boring old loans. They could be getting into this crypto thing, which they've been told is the future of finance.
Well, I am old enough to remember, and in fact, part of my political coming of age was the Great Recession and the greed of the banks and this high level of risky speculation and derivatives trading that also incorporated a very risky asset into parts of banking that created the amount of risk that resulted in the crash, right? And so this is my overall question is does this have the capacity to crash our economy? Maybe you can answer now, or if they get their way, or neither, or both.
Yeah, I mean, I do think, unfortunately, that there is a serious amount of risk here. I suspect with the current level of integration, even if crypto went through a collapse that we saw just a couple years ago, we would not see a Great Recession style contagion. But I think that the very rapidly progressing changes in regulation that the cryptocurrency industry has spent over $100 million on and is raising even more money to continue to pursue and seems to be getting very much raise that risk, and that type of contagion could be in the very near future, unfortunately, if these types of regulations are removed, or if favorable regulations are installed for the cryptocurrency industry. The more that we're seeing the US government endorsing crypto, I think the higher the risk is becoming. We're starting to see states talking about establishing Bitcoin reserves at the state level. And so, this is, actual people's money, taxpayer money, going towards acquiring Bitcoin, which, as you mentioned, is profiting those like the Winklevoss twins who bought Bitcoin very early on and are now billionaires. Again, at the expense of everyday people, while also introducing this degree of financial risk throughout the American economy, and honestly further, that could be devastating during a future collapse. So I am very concerned about the type of risk that we are rapidly taking on.
And then it's a good opportunity to talk about Andreessen Horowitz, and we covered it on our show. Mark Andreessen in November went on to the Joe Rogan podcast, which is the tech oligarch propaganda show, and he was or VC pick your poison. He was saying that Elizabeth Warren is personally debanking all of us and coming after us and targeting us politically. She does not head the CFPB. But Elon Musk is taking a hammer to the agency that has returned $21 billion to consumers who were victimized by corporate greed, and banking greed. And then he went on, and now he's basically claiming that his business in particular is being targeted, and you mentioned their holdings in crypto. What is this debanking thing all about, and why are billionaire crypto holders like Andreessen fixated on changing those regulations?
Yeah, so there has been this narrative coming out of the cryptocurrency industry that they are being systematically debanked by banking regulators and by agencies like the CFPB and by the Biden administration in general, through a campaign in which basically the administration and regulators were pressuring banks to deny banking services to anyone and any company in the cryptocurrency industry. And they've really sort of co-opted this term of debanking, which is, this idea where someone is improperly denied a bank account due to, their race, their religion, their economic status, any number of things, not based on their actual risk profile, but just because the bank decides they don't want to work with them for sort of discriminatory reasons. The crypto industry is claiming that they are being discriminated against and debanked in this same way, when in reality, most of the documents that they have provided that they claim show, hard evidence of this debanking campaign really show regulators trying to evaluate the risk of banks offering crypto products themselves. Like I said, the Bitcoin ATMs in the bank lobby and the crypto purchases in your banking app that sound like they're covered by FDIC insurance. There has been pretty little in the way of evidence that there is any sort of campaign to systematically debank the crypto industry. And in reality, it seems like banks basically doing their own risk assessments and saying this crypto company is too risky for us to take on as a customer. You're going to have to look elsewhere, which is a legal thing to do. Banks are not required to provide services to every customer. They just can't deny them for discriminatory reasons.
Well, they are discriminating against these corporate persons, according to the Supreme Court,
right,
based on the industry that they're in, which is the same as apparently racial discrimination.
Right. But anyway, this is all culminated in this campaign. It's been used as basically ammunition by the cryptocurrency industry to bolster this campaign to attack regulations on banks and other financial service providers. And it's ironically enough been used as ammunition to attack the CFPB, which is actually the number one defender against discriminatory debanking. They are sort of the primary consumer debanking watchdog. And yet, as the crypto industry is making all of these claims of debanking and even arguing about more general debanking against, they say it's happening against conservatives or other industries like the firearms industry or, religious organizations, even as they are making these claims about consumer debanking, they are celebrating the shutdown of the CFPB. Coinbase, for example, their CEO, Brian Armstrong, was, basically shooting off confetti cannons about the fact that the CFPB was being shut down, probably because the CFPB recently issued a sort of interpretive rule saying that Coinbase would have to make whole customers who are victims of basically phishing scams, stealing their cryptocurrency out of their Coinbase accounts, which a recent investigation by a cryptocurrency researcher called Zach XBT suggested was like $300 million a year that Coinbase was allowing to be stolen from its customers that they would have to repay. And so, it's very clear why someone like Brian Armstrong and Coinbase would be opposed to the CFPB, because they might install consumer protections for Coinbase customers who are historically ignored by Coinbase when they complain about stolen funds. And, it's inconvenient for them to support an agency that otherwise might be a very useful ally if they were concerned about debanking in the ways that they claim. But in reality, it's really just a political weapon to try to advance their goal of slashing regulations, reducing these firewalls between the banking industry and crypto, and, basically just allowing them to do whatever it is that they want. Consumers be damned.
And you write about the dubbing of it as Operation Choke Point 2.0. Can you explain what that means?
So that's a callback to a actual improper debanking, basically scandal that happened during the Obama administration. The true extent of it has been overblown somewhat, I think, but it is true that there was this effort through government pressure to discourage banks from providing services to a number of industries that they decided were high risk. And so that included firearms. It also included, payday lending and those types of
Great. Good job.
Yeah, right. Escort services and various other sort of industries that were deemed to be at high risk for money laundering and those types of things. And that was shut down. The FDIC retracted that and, apologized, and there was investigations and all sorts of things. The crypto industry is saying that what's happening right now is Operation Choke Point 2.0, that basically the Biden administration and Elizabeth Warren, I guess, revived this, controversial and improper campaign against an industry. Although there has been very little in the way of evidence suggesting that that is true.
And that, what are their goals, I guess, as we wrap here? Did they want to change the classification of their regulation? Is that part of what they're trying to do with this?
No, I mean, it really comes down to they want access to the banking system. They are, sort of categorizing a very broad range of things as debanking that are really not debanking. So, even though they describe it as being denied access to banking accounts, they're actually talking a lot of the time about these banking services that banks would be providing that would be closely integrating cryptocurrency into the banking system. And like I said, I think it's really just a weapon against the banking regulators to be used sort of in a very broad way to undermine them and to diminish the degree to which they can oversee banks.
Gotcha. Well, Molly White, really appreciate your time today. Your work on researching crypto, sometimes I have to read it a few times to fully get it because you're so technical and smart, but it really helps. And so I'd encourage everybody to go check out the Citation Needed newsletter. We'll put a link to that below down in the description wherever people are listening to or watching this. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me.
All right, with that, folks, we're going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half, where we will take your calls and read your IMs, and we have some fun clips today. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning? You had an awesome episode yesterday.
Yeah, we released our Sunday show that was originally released on Sunday for members only, for everybody to watch, because we had Eric Blanc on talking about his new book, We Are the Union. I think we're going to have him on this program for that book as well. It's a very interesting look at the sort of state of union organizing right now. And that's the sort of theory. And as the practice, we had Edward and Ben on from the Philly Whole Foods Workers United union, who won 130 to 100, their union vote. And also they were listeners of this program and Left Reckoning and TMBS, which to me is basically confirmation that I don't know if you've seen this meme on TikTok of I'm looking for my audience.
Yeah.
That's who I do this stuff for, is people who work those jobs that stand up to their bosses. And so now I am one of the most annoyingly self-assured people in all of media. And I'm going to be really annoying on social media going forward. So check that out. And tonight, Jefferson Morley of jfkfacts.org, one of the best he had a really good talk with Vanity Fair about what to expect from the sort of JFK document releases. We have him tonight on Left Reckoning, talking about Bay of Pigs, talking about Operation Northwoods, all that sort of stuff, including the CIA lies about Lee Harvey Oswald.
Did you see what I DM'd you maybe weeks ago about? It was Bush talking about Kennedy. It was H.W. Bush talking about Kennedy and I forget who it was for. It was a funeral service, and he starts smiling, talking about the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah,
he starts basically stifling a laugh as he looks to somebody in the audience.
George H.W. Bush, who was a personal contact with a guy named George de Mohrenschildt, who was Lee Harvey Oswald's best friend in Dallas.
Coincidences abound. I'm going to be very excited to check out that Jefferson Morley interview.
George de Mohrenschildt, also a longtime sort of aristocrat, spy, oil related person. So it's just interesting the type of friends somebody like Lee Harvey Oswald might make, and who might hook him up with jobs at the Dallas Book Depository. just interesting that that guy would later call George H.W. Bush saying, hey, I'm receiving a lot of questions. Can I get some guidance on what to do about this? And
someone points out it was Gerald Ford's funeral. Yeah, it was like it wasn't Kennedy's or like Ted Kennedy's. To bring it up out of nowhere seemed like a very interesting choice.
Where was he on the day Kennedy was killed? Can he be clear about that? He's somebody who kind of can't. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah. It would be funny, and it truly would be the best thing Donald Trump did as president if his feud with the Bushes resulted in him releasing some of that classified information to the public. That's where he could actually be useful for the first time in his life. Anyway, as I mentioned, ESPN were on a bit of a hiatus, but because we've been talking about, and we will in the fun half talk more about the just horrific effects on the federal workforce. Tomorrow, if you would like to, Bradley, we can pull this up. We did from yesterday, that day of action. There's a clip that Dorsey clipped yesterday, I saw. So that has the information there. But if you want to basically stand with federal workers, there are a bunch of actions across the United States saying no to Elon Musk's push to gut federal services and impose mass layoffs. February 19th, you can go to the website, Save Our Services Day of Action. We'll put a link to that below. Also coming up, we're going to try to do more of this just to give people opportunities to resist and protest and find some community in these dark times. There is, I think, an economic blackout planned for next Friday, the 28th. So this is 10 days away. We'll be informing people about this. But in protest of these actions, I think a lot of people are encouraged to limit the usage of services if they have the capacity to do so. So I'm giving everybody 10 days notice to start to plan and think about that. We'll have more details about that in the future. So boycotts, not the only way that, or limiting, consumption, not really the best way probably to protest as like to change the world. But as we're trying to just find little ways to put pressure on this administration, Trump cares about stock market go up or stock market go down. So if people show their protest this way, it could have some sort of effect.
We need to most acutely destroy Elon's company. So anytime you see somebody driving a Tesla, particularly a Cybertruck, let them hear about it. Don't get into a fight or whatever.
Don't get into a fight, but there have been people who have been putting sell your Tesla little flyers under the windshields of these things.
I saw there's a plastic surgeon up in Worcester who is like, everyone is giving me bad. He has a gold Cybertruck, I think.
Oh, sounds like he's great.
He's like, why, everyone should just accept different opinions. No, you shouldn't have bought that thing, you idiot.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. I hate seeing those damn Cybertrucks all around. I literally think it's going to impale somebody.
They already kill people.
They are. It is more dangerous than the Ford Pinto. More dangerous than the Ford Pinto, which had its fuel truck in the trunk, in the back of the car. Like, what are we doing here? By the way, this is what government regulations are for.
And it's really that's Elon's not so much taking money out of the treasury as like Joe Rogan says. He's destroying all the referees. It's like if 2019 James Harden all of a sudden got in charge of the referees organization, said, I'm firing a bunch of y'all.
And putting in my family members.
Exactly. and then all of a sudden he wins the MVP award the next 3 years in the finals. Right. That's what's happening.
Except higher stakes. Higher stakes.
Well, that's debatable.
All right, guys. We'll take your phone calls in the fun half. The number is 646-257-3920. See you there.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. So I was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. I was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. I was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Twerk, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. We shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Twerk, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Twerk,
Wow.
sushi.
I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind.
Who was offered to twerk,
Yeah.
sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Twerk, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Twerk.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Twerk.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
I had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Twerk. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but like, I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job. Twerk.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
Willy Wonka twerk.
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered to twerk?
That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's
Twerk.
a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing.
What's that offered to twerk?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
Offered to twerk.
That's a real thing. That's
Poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
real thing. That's
Poker with the boys. Offered to twerk.
That's a real thing. That's
Poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Twerk. Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, Glenn.
Twerk. Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Twerk.
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has like the weight of the world on his shoulders. Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the Majority Report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks are doing great.
Now, shut up. You don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's
No.
one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best. Ultraviolet.
Twerk.
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't bitch. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she
finance.
wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back, folks. Apple Cideritis says, as far as passive-aggressive confrontation with Cybertruck drivers, often the thumbs down is more hurtful than the middle finger.
I like literally think about, and I can't do it because like obviously you don't want to do Nazi salutes in public, but they deserve to be ironically saluted at.
Oh yes, yes, or at the very least, go up to them. You can go up to them and say like, "Hey, man, you know, I really, really appreciate you standing with Elon Musk and you know the reassertion of the white race in America," or something. CPG Matt working to say Worcester as if Sam would manifest from the shadows if he got it wrong was truly fantastic.
Yeah.
I didn't even notice that. What'd you try to say?
I said Worcester.
Worcester. NB laborer patiently awaiting the Sam Bankman-Fried was too soon articles. Yeah, I mean they learned nothing from that. They did the bad egg and off with them.
He was a Democrat.
Travis from Hartford, during the Kamala campaign, whenever someone would text me asking to vote, I'd always mention cozying up to crypto. I'd get canned messages excluding her standing by genocide, but when I press about crypto, it was silence. Interesting.
That's funny. I heard that they took people off the list when they mentioned Gaza.
I saw that online too, yeah.
Just another way they decided, made a conscious choice to demobilize their base ahead of what I think we can all recognize was a rather important election.
Yes, pretty important.
Israel and crypto.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen this dynamic so many times in different contexts about the Republicans embrace their base and what they want, and the Democrats say no, 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 whether it's from Bernie Sanders or just ending a genocide, they feel like they have there's no consequences because they can always
when they do it. Like 2020, they kneeled in kente class. They benefited from the George Floyd protests. They did. And that's because they co-opted it, frankly. Yeah. And I think it's good to have them win over Republicans. They also co-opted it in like 2008. A lot of the anti-war sentiment, like they can do it. It's just like sometimes they decide not to, and that is catastrophic for democracy.
It's crazy because I really do think that the specific kind of Democrat right now in Washington and the consultant ethos there, it's such a specific kind of brain rot that we don't see fully embraced by the governors in this country who were floated as potential 2024 replacements for Biden, even though it was really not possible once he chose to run again and technically won the